Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome. Again, we'll give it just a little less than a minute and we'll get started. All right, so Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everyone. Welcome. My name is Daniel Yassi Nelson. I'm the director of GAMA New York. Everyone is welcome to our online exhibition series called What Does Liberation Look Like? Tonight we are going to feature our sister and friend Nasra Nimaga. So welcome, Nasra.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. So I just want to give a few brief remarks, and I'm going to turn it over to our lead curator, Taeesha Muhammad. Alhamdulillah, just so everybody is aware, GAMA has recently turned 4 years old. We were founded in September in 2016. So we have been reflecting on these past 4 years, and mashallah, we're very proud and pleased to be at this point and to be here with you all. And I should acknowledge that Taeesha Muhammad, who is our curator of the series, and last week we focused on Sister Maya Eatman. These were some of the first members of the GAMA New York community. Mashallah, I remember meeting with them in the winter of 2016, 2017, and then Nasra Nimaga was early to join as well in the spring of 2017. So we appreciate each of you, and we appreciate your contributions, and just very pleased and proud to see where everything has gone in terms of building community, building creative communities across the United States and even the world, and to build a platform of professional support for Muslim artists with the intention of having creative liberation in the Muslim community. So alhamdulillah, again, I just want to express my appreciation to everyone who's with us, to all of our artists, and to the vision of our sister Taeesha, who has led this great program for the last 6 weeks. So Taeesha, please take it away.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, Nasra. Are you ready?
I mean, I hope so. But we're about to find out.
We're about to find out. I'm going to share my screen right now, and let's talk about all the beautiful things that are going on with your work, my dear.
All right.
Okay, where are we at? All right, Nasra, here we are. American hijabi. I'm going to show you the order that we have put your slides in. While doing so, can you tell us a little bit about your start as a portrait and an architecture?
Okay, so I guess I'm an architectural designer based in New York, for those of you that don't know me. So I work predominantly on institutional buildings with more or less an emphasis on schools. So a lot of primary and secondary education. And so, of course, I went to school to become an architect. And I suppose my path to kind of portraiture hasn't been as linear. Maybe in a way, I've always been somewhat artistically inclined, but I feel like my artistic expression kind of has taken many form, like my whole life in a way. Like I took visual arts in high school, and so I painted, I drew with pens and pencils and charcoal, and did mosaics and collages. But then it wasn't until I would say grad school I was looking for an elective that would reduce my level of stress while I was doing thesis, and I took a black and white film photography class. It was actually an undergraduate class, and I had to fight 2 professors for them to let me in because they were like, "You're not an undergraduate." And so it was a film class, and it was the first time I kind of just like shot with the camera like deliberately. And I feel like I didn't actually do any portraits at that point. Maybe I did like 1 or 2, but it was more about objects and just like enjoying the experience of like developing my own film and printing my own photos. And so years later, I feel like when I was working in New York, I needed a creative outlet again. And then I started shooting digital photography. I had this like used Nikon DSLR, and I actually took a workshop. So there's this tiny school that I hope survived the pandemic that's around Union Square, and they basically offer like 4 or 5 session kind of courses that are kind of intensive photography workshops. It's like it was like 4 hours a day on a Monday night after work, and we just like walk around the city and we'd shoot, and we'd have crits with a kind of the instructor who are like more advanced photographers. And that was kind of when I actually started shooting, I feel like in a more professional sense. And portraiture kind of happened at some point. I decided that the ability to frame moments and snapshots of people, of faces, of life in a way kind of resonated with me the most. And I just started, first of all, I started shooting people I know, and like friends and coworkers, and I just started shooting more and more. And then suddenly people would be like, so how much do you charge, or how can you, and I guess I became aware that I was actually getting better or good at this. And then then I became to think about what it is that I wanted to capture in my photographs.
Okay. So as we go through these photographs, can you take us through your thought process?
Yeah, of course. So I guess in a way, I find that photography for me, like photographs tell stories, right? And, to a large extent, I think my portraits explore, a wide range of themes that engage kind of perceptions of beauty and identity. I often think that perceptions of identity are complex, and then obviously perceptions of beauty and what it means to be beautiful or good looking, or, ideals are kind of complex. And I kind of try to engage that. And I think, just try to capture that in many different ways in a way. And I think my portraits explore themes ranging from religion and faith to race and colorism and age. They explore gender, and like hijab for me is huge as a Muslim woman. It's of course a great issue of contention in the world we live in, with sort of half the world trying to make women take that choose to wear it, take it off, and then a part of the world making women put it on. And to my mind, engaging it in the American context is super interesting. So this is Wafika. I guess she started we met actually at the first GAMA exhibition in New Jersey. I remember where I was showing a photo, and I remember meeting her because I guess she lives close by, and she came. So the first exhibition was actually at a mosque in New Jersey, and I met her, and we started talking, and she was like, oh, she really wants to get into modeling, but of course she wears hijab. And she really liked my photo, but that was like one of the first 5 photos I've ever taken. And I was like, yeah, it's pretty good. We should really work together. And so we started doing that. And I think the way I think my process varies by shoot. So this one in particular was kind of a collaboration. So it was like me, and Eid Films, if you follow him on Instagram, he does really interesting short videos on sort of Muslim artists or creatives or people that do different things, when they're always like short. So he wanted to kind of do one on Wafika and me working together. And so we kind of met in the city, like the two of us and another kind of mutual friend that we'd met before, Syed, who's actually a dental student who does beautiful Arabic calligraphy. And so because we had this idea that we'd shoot her in an abaya, so it's just, Wafika is actually like 5 foot, she's a tiny person. We put her in my abaya because I'm 5'9", so that it would like a whole lot of fabric. And we had this idea and the effect, and shoot in the streets of New York City, and Syed would kind of like paint right on her face in a way with like an eyeliner, like create tears. So the right side of her face kind of says dream, believe, dare, do. And the left side of her face says your faith has to be greater than your fear. And to my mind, like this whole series, and there's a lot of shots that like, this is one of the few shoots I've done where I just had so many shots, and I feel like I still go through them and I'll be like, oh, this is another good one to edit. But I feel like I wanted to like celebrate women like Wafika, women who choose to kind of be visibly Muslim within the Western context, it isn't easy, but I feel like to them as a symbol of faith, they embrace it, right? And it doesn't in any way hold them back from achieving whatever it is they want to achieve. So to my mind, this American Hijabi series was kind of about that.
I really like that. I know her too, and she's like such a cool, nice person, very chill and very serious, but like, you know, she's able to move about the world in a very classic way. I like that. And I like the way that you caught her in this picture. It almost encompasses exactly who she is. Alhamdulillah. Let's talk about this one. My Black is Beautiful. Shameless plug. I love this picture.
It is a shameless plug, isn't it? And I think it was a huge it was a campaign some years ago. I definitely did not coin the term. It's not Nasra Genius. It's someone else who kind of coined the term "My Black is Beautiful," just because there's a range of Blackness, right? But we each kind of need to be comfortable and embrace whatever version or interpretation or whatever kind of Blackness we have, right? Blackness it's complex and it varies just by, you know, in complexion in many ways. And so in looking at that photo, so her name is Sarah, and I feel like she has this insanely beautiful skin, right? Like it's dark. She's Sudanese. She's like long and slim and dark, and she owns it in a beautiful way. Because I was like, "What's the boldest color dress you have?" And she's just like, "Wait for it." And then I'm like, "Can you meet me on the bridge at 7 a.m. on a Saturday?" Because of course, getting the bridge like this empty, it's near impossible. So you have to go either really early or like in February when it's, you know, freezing, because between the cyclists and the tourists walking and just everything, it's always like chaotic. So but I needed to capture it when it was just like calm, you know, and just her being like owning the space. And I feel like it really captured it. Like this is kind of probably up there like my top 3 series of photos that I've ever shot.
Beauty is ageless.
So this is Janice. Janice is kind of this phenomenal woman in her 60s who started her modeling career in her 60s, and she's been, you know, featured on like ABC, and she does campaigns now. But she's kind of like a super interesting person that I met at like a photography event, and we started talking. And she's actually a photographer, but then I feel like she found her path to modeling in her 60s, and she's a stunning woman, right? That just like, and to my mind, I'm always like, I think we live in a world where to age is to become less beautiful, where people kind of live their lives trying to hold on to their youth, right? You have celebrities who are like, oh, look at her, she's 50, but she looks amazing. And by them saying she looks amazing, they mean she looks young, right? In a way, most of the time. And to my mind, I was kind of interested, like what makes Janice beautiful is her gray hair and her wrinkles, like just everything about her personality. Like she kind of like commands the space when she's there, and she's really great. And so that's kind of what this series were about. I remember meeting her and I was like, can I shoot some portraits? And we worked together several times, and she's like, yeah. So we met after work, and she lived pretty close to where I work in the city. And we just kind of met up and we walked around the city and we did some portraits and we had dinner and talked for hours. But yeah, so this was just kind of about engaging the subject, you know, like at what age does one cease to be beautiful? It's in the same way, at what age does one become beautiful, you know, and does it fade? And to my mind, it never does fade. It just changes and it shifts, right? Because no one can look at this and be like, this woman is not stunning. She kind of is, right?
You captured her beautifully. You've given her eyes have like a life of their own. So it's really incredible. Hair is political. So
yeah. I love shooting hair. I feel all kinds of hair, but in particular black hair, because it's such an issue of contention, right? Like you sit in like 2020 America, or like last year in 2019, when I was reading articles about bills passed about not discriminating people based on hair. And it's just like absolutely ludicrous that like me or you, Taeesha, or the two of them, my subjects here, that you kind of need permission to wear your hair the way it grows out of your head, right? Yeah. Just like, you know what I mean? Like it's literally like is crazy, right? Because this
It's
is
a
how,
form of rebellion in so many
yeah,
ways. It's ridiculous.
absolutely. It is a form of rebellion, but it also like, what kind of a world are we living in that we need permission to wear our hair because it's automatically by default is unprofessional,
The
or
hair
yeah,
conformity.
or not acceptable? And you have so many people, I think myself included, like putting 410 degrees in your hair to make it do something it doesn't want to do, right? And so I generally love shooting people with big afros who just like own their hair, like, this is who I am, this is the way it is, this is my identity. And
Right.
I feel like black hair, in a way, it's magical. Like, it can do so many things, and it comes in so many, in a range of textures and coil patterns, and it changes. It's different when it's wet, when it's humid, when it's not. And so that's what kind of this
This
was about.
picture, the hair explains everything. Like
Yeah, yeah. And they
that's
actually, yeah, they're actually brothers, but they do have great hair.
they do have my faith, my identity.
Okay. So this one actually, so there's this, it was actually a photo event, like a meetup, organized by this. So there's kind of, it's not really a collective, it's in a way a movement called Pursuit of Portraits that was started a couple of years ago. And basically they have this huge Instagram following, and if you follow their page, but they're very much about celebrating diversity and beauty. And he did all of these things where he did like pursuit in 30 countries, and he would go to like different countries in different cities and kind of organize kind of collaboration platforms for photographers and models in a way. So this was like in Coney Island on like a Saturday morning at like, I don't even know, 7 a.m. 8, no, maybe it was later. It was like 8 or 9, but it was early on a summer morning. And it was just like a ton of super interesting people turn out. And I remember seeing him, like he's a stylist actually from Toronto. And he looks good with his floral turban and like a blue shirt. And I was just like, can I photograph you? And we started walking. And oftentimes when I meet someone that I don't know and I need to photograph them, I kind of just ask them, walk with me, let's scope the space and find I need to find the context, right? And then we just like found a sunflower, and I was like, can you hold this for me? And I think in the same way that, for example, that like women in hijab are visible in their faith, I find that Sikh men are, like there's kind of, you can draw a parallel in that you see him and you can identify him, because he has a visible symbol of faith. And that's just, it's a conscious decision that he makes to just be like, okay, everywhere I go, I'm going to stand out because everyone's going to see me and they're going to see this. But, my faith is important to me, and that's why I do this. And so I'm doing it, right? And he was just like so comfortable in his own skin, and it was like amazing.
Yeah, I really like this one too. So you were always talking about, explain to us how you find your locations for taking your photos.
It's I think it depends on the shoot. Sometimes I just stumble upon a place if it's like somehow an impromptu shoot, like the sunflower. Then you just like walk around and find a spot, and somehow I see a space and it resonates with me. But sort of with this one we had thought about just the logistics of it, because like the videographer who makes the kind of the documentary maker, like he lives in New Jersey, so he was commuting into the city that Saturday. Wafika lives in New Jersey, I live in Brooklyn, and then the Syed who did the calligraphy is in Connecticut, in dental school. So it was all like about all of us thinking, where can we meet, which
Right.
Manhattan became the default. And we were like, so what part of Manhattan? And it's about capturing the city when it has people, but not too many people, and just the right backdrop. And I think we were like, kind of picked this area because it somehow is super dynamic, like this station. And it's really funny. Like I kind of hate this architect as an architect. Like I don't like the fact that he kind of just makes cars all over the world. But there's a like he replicates this. So it's but I feel like it's growing on me. But I feel like since architecture school, like I really hated his building. Like he has in Barcelona a bridge that looks exactly like that, and he kind of replicates these things that cost an exorbitant amount of money and look like, I don't know, to my mind, not that great. But there's kind of just the experience of seeing something that kind of is very formal and dynamic, but like disappears. And I think with putting Wafika in like an oversized abaya and just like I love movement and I love capturing movement, but I don't necessarily like blurry images. I kind of like to freeze a shot, you know, like I want to capture just a moment, like the moment is important to me. And I feel like just all of those things aligned with kind of the space. Like we shot here, we shot kind of around the World Trade Center, we shot on the street. It's kind of an interesting part of Manhattan in that it presented a good backdrop. And, you know, we kind of needed spaces where she could change and where she could kind of like lay on a kind of a bench so that Sied could like eyeliner her face with the calligraphy. So it's like a series of things. And so it changes. And sometimes like with this one, we had to like pre-think about where I wanted to shoot and what kind of shots I wanted to capture. With this one, I knew I wanted her on a bridge. Like there's no doubt about it. Like I wanted her early in the morning, and I'm like, I need you to wake up crazy early, and I need you to do your makeup, and I need you to wear the brightest dress you own. And I'm like, what is the brightest dress? I was like, first, and at first I was like, do you have a red dress? She's like, I have a red dress. I'm like, what else do you have? She's like, I have this dress. It's like neon green or yellow and satin. And I'm like, wear that, right? And it's just this, but like New York is a strange city in that people stare, but they not so much, because they're kind of used to people doing all kinds of things in the streets of New York. So they're not that bothered, and they won't bother you. They kind of just like exist around you, you know, as you just like, sometimes I'm like literally on the floor trying to get a shot, but everyone's just like, okay, there's a grown-ass woman laying down on the floor in Manhattan, but like yeah, I don't care.
That's
But
such a good thing. They're like, they see it, but they don't see it.
yeah. And so this is actually the salt shed, and you know, there's that. So it's a very sculptural building right on the West Side Highway in Chelsea, and it's actually basically they just literally it's salt shed. They store salt for the winter. But in terms of if you're looking for like a concrete backdrop that just disappears, it's kind of your building. And I remember I had talked to Janice and I was like, I kind of want a background that will disappear a little bit, you know, like behind you, like kind of be there, but not. And so we talked about it like, oh, this is pretty good. So we met. So we also needed something close to my job because I worked till 6. And then we were trying to beat sunset, which at that time was like around 7 p.m. So we literally had to like come from my job, take the subway, walk all the way to the West Side Highway, get the shots before it went dark. So it was like a mixture of trying to just balance things. So this is actually Industry City, and I feel like we were talking about Industry City earlier, and yeah. I absolutely love it. Like if you live in New York and you haven't been to Industry City, you need to go. Like it's one of my favorite places in a weird type of way, and it just because it has so much character, right? So you know, for those of you who don't know, it's basically a series of, there used to be storage warehouses, I don't know, historically many years ago, but now they've been renovating them and converting them to kind of like spaces for artists and businesses, and like there's coffee shops, there's a food court, and then basically it's a series of courtyards. That it's a series of warehouses, and in between them there's these courtyards, and now they're renovating each one to have a different character. Like one of them has a stage, so they do like concerts, you know, well, pre-COVID they did like concerts, and one of them's like an open little field, one of them has like a lawn. So it's nice to just see like people that live in like Brooklyn and the city, like there's like a patch of grass, like, and they kind of have character. So this one's kind of my favorite one. It just has this like little like old shed, and it's and they sometimes have like art pieces and sculptures. It's one of the most unfinished ones, so sometimes it's closed, but this time it was open, and we kind of just needed something like rough around the edges to like use as a backdrop. Yeah, and this is Coney Island. So right off the boardwalk, there's like a patch of green. I do like Coney Island as well. It's a good backdrop. It's crazy with the hot dog stands and the amusement park and the beach and the boardwalk. It's like a combination of a lot you can work with, and it's really close, pretty close to my house. Oftentimes I'm always like, you want to meet me there? So in terms of convenience, it wins.
So I want to ask you too, like, how do you know what a good picture is? You take, as a photographer, I know you take hundreds of pictures of different things, but how do you know that is the actual photo you're going to use, or that's the one you want to bring forth? How do you know what a good photo is?
Interesting question. So funnily, I feel like I don't know that yet because I'm really bad at coloring. And at some point, I'm always like, shit, if I was rich or making enough money, I would pay an editor. And so I'm terrible at coloring because sometimes I like go shoot and then maybe I have, I don't know, 40, 50 shots. And I'm trying to get to 3 or 5. And at first I'll pick one day and end up at like 35. And I'm like, this is ridiculous, right? And then try to color. So I guess it's very rare that I end up with just like one that I like, but I try to get to like 5 that I like. But to my mind, like what makes them good for me is it kind of just stops me when I'm like flipping through. I look at it and it like I stop, like to my mind, it's thought provoking, it's evocative. I look at it and I hope others look at it and they kind of like their reaction is that I wonder what this is about, or I want to see more of this. And to my mind, even when I'm kind of like trying to cull down my shots, I kind of like move through really fast the first time. And if it's good, trust me, I'll stop. You'll notice it. Just and I try to be conscious of that, but it also has to be for me something that captures the subject. And I feel like people oftentimes say that many people live life unaware of their true potential, and I feel like in the same way that's how I think that many people live life unaware of kind of how unique or beautiful they are. And to my mind, a good shot is one where I see it, right? I see even what sometimes they don't see.
Right. I think in your shots, and someone asked, do you have a book? Garcia just asked, Alfredo Garcia asked, do you have a book out?
Not yet, but Alf should know this. Yeah, my friend. You wanna Kickstarter me? I don't yet, and I feel like I do have a website, and then I kind of and an Instagram page that I kind of like post. That's kind of where it's the most up to date, just because it's the easiest to update. And I feel like I don't have a book yet, but what I'm working on and what I've been trying to use this pandemic for is to kind of catalog my work, because I feel like at the beginning when I started shooting, I was just shoot as much as you can, because I needed to kind of feel like I got good and confident in my skill set. But then at some point now I have this array of work. So what do I do with it? And then, like thematically, I do have like overlaps and to my mind, like a project for me, a photography project is never finished in a way. And that I feel like now I'm looking like at shots I took 3 years ago and I'm looking at them differently. And some that I took 3 years ago would kind of work in a series with some that I took a year ago. And so I'm working on it. I feel like I have to, I'm at the point where I'm thinking about being more deliberate in my work, if that makes sense. Kind of like shooting less, but more meaningful, more directed, more project curated work. And then as that kind of forms into a thing together, we'll see what it frames itself into.
So, does your family support you in what you do?
In my photography? Oh yeah, my family supports. Generally, my family supports me in everything that I do. I think even 2 of my sisters are on the call. One of them lives in Hong Kong, so God knows it's really early in the morning for her there. And 2 of them are actually here on the call. And I feel like, yeah, they've always supported me. I think I'm a Black Muslim woman working in a white man profession. And so I feel like the support needed to have started long before my photography, in that, like I kind of, moved to America. So in a way, they've actually been my greatest support system in a way. Like I couldn't have done anything that I've done in life, without God and without my sisters and my family in all aspects of my life.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
So these pieces, how do they connect you to the theme of liberation?
So to my mind, being liberated is kind of being free to live life on your own terms. You know what I mean? And so I feel like they connect me in that way. And I find like, so the backdrop to a lot of my work, it kind of draws inspiration from my personal experience in a way, in that like I like to explore identity, and to my mind I've kind of in a way existed in a constant otherness in all my social identifiers, in a weird way, in that like I was born in Hong Kong, I'm Black, I was born of a Malian father and a Kenyan mother, and I grew up in Kenya. So even in Kenya, I was kind of not Kenyan enough. You know, I'm a Black woman living in America. You know, I'm not African American, I'm African descent, you know. I'm a Black, visibly Muslim woman working in corporate America in kind of a white man profession. So in a way, I constantly, and you know, and I'm Black and Muslim in America, where sometimes Black and Muslim is perceived as less Muslim because Muslims should be brown, right? And and so I feel like just because of that experience, I feel of like somewhat otherness, it made me want to explore these. And, you know, and I don't know that all of my work kind of captures this, but I feel like a lot of it does. And to my mind, I think, you know, liberation to me means people being able to live their lives on their own terms. You know, her being able to choose to wear her hijab because, you know, it's her symbol of faith, it's her identity, it's who she is, right? Same with sort of choosing to wear a turban. It's being Black but not being told, oh, you're pretty attractive for a Black girl, right? Just being like, you are attractive, period, right? It's being 66 and deciding you want to become a model and be like, why not, right? Models should be representative of all ages in society and all sizes. And so it's basically thinking about society is liberated when we are all kind of comfortable living as our authentic selves.
I got that. I got that from your work. I felt like, you know, you were capturing the other, you know, the other that people don't necessarily want to accept, but are here anyway and are beautiful and are amazing in their own rights. You know what I mean? Maya has a question.
Yes.
Are you a photographer who's an architect or an architect who's a photographer?
I don't know yet. I'm currently constantly playing tag of war with both of them. Like I don't know, and I like, to my mind, I feel, you know, like even thinking about how the two are connected, like I want to say that my artistic pursuits are intertwined, but to my mind it's not important for them to be intersectional, and it's not important for me to choose. I feel like I like them both for different reasons. I enjoy different aspects of both. I'm just going to keep doing both until at some point one self-selects and one wins, or maybe they don't, right? And I feel like architecture was a good starting point because it's a very generalist profession. Like we tend to be experts at nothing, but we kind of know a little bit about a lot of things, and we're expected to know a little bit about a lot of things in order to kind of make a building happen. And in the same way, I feel like it's not impossible to balance both. Sometimes it's a lot, but I feel like for the moment I'm both, right? Then we'll see what happens.
So you chose some very strong backgrounds for your pieces where they definitely add to the photography, the centerpiece. You know what I'm saying? Like I really enjoyed even your backgrounds were like strong, and you saying where they are, it becomes a part of the photograph so much so like a character in the photograph, right? Is that a purposeful act?
I think so. I think, you know, going back to that architecture and photography, you know, separation, I guess architecture is kind of my team sport, right? In that, you know, it's a slower process, a very different thought process and way of working. It involves a whole army of people, especially like I work on institutional buildings, so they're big projects and a long timeline. But photography for me is kind of an individual experience, right, and an art of expression. But what it does afford me is kind of an opportunity to kind of combine, you know, nuances of human experience with a sense of space, which sometimes I do. Like sometimes I zoom in a lot, but then it's really important to me how I'm framing the space behind her, what's happening behind her. And that, I think, definitely is connected to kind of my architectural education and just thinking about a space, you know, and like what is happening in all around my subject.
Yes. I am going to open up the floor to questions. Thank you so much. So everyone who's written something in the chat box that I have not gotten to, please, please, please speak and ask Nasra your question. First up, of course, is Daniel. Please ask your question, Daniel.
MashaAllah, Taeesha, well, Nasra, yeah, your work is so beautiful, and I was just really reflecting on some of the things you had said, and I guess it's more of a, a comment than a question. I guess I would have asked the question that Maya did. It's like, how does your architecture practice relate to your photography? I think you answered that very, very well and beautifully, and it's almost like your awareness of space also informs how you frame the shot and how you frame the person, and you're aware of the space and the context, and it's all very deliberate, I loved how you talked about like how you're engaging in the public space in New York City as well, how it's like you're reclaiming the space, so that kind of relates to thinking about authenticity, and like what you said about being our authentic selves. It's like being our authentic selves in a public forum and expressing yourselves in that way. And I think that's really beautiful. So I just want to express my appreciation for all of that. And I guess like my last comment would be, I was kind of thinking about your portraits and comparing them to just what you see mostly these days, especially like the Instagram kind of aesthetic. It's like, I think Instagram has this effect on culture where it's like this introducing this like sameness and this kind of these kind of standards of beauty that are very kind of I believe artificial. But like your photography is like the opposite of that. It's like, so like you choose your subject based on who they are as a person, and it's almost like what you said about like the success of a photo. It's like people don't know what their potential is, but then the photo shows it. That's just such a beautiful observation and insight. But it's like, it's almost like you start from that point, that insight, and then the inspiration for the photo goes from there. So anyway, these are just comments, and I guess my last comment would be like, it might be interesting to hear like the stories of the people like paired with the photographs. It's almost like, I almost think like another example is like Humans of New York. It's like that guy, is able to pull out these amazing stories from just everyday people, but his photos are very basic. He's not like a photographer. So it's almost like you have all that content. So it'd be interesting to see the backgrounds of some of these really amazing people too. So anyway, mashallah, great work. And thank you for sharing everything. So.
Yeah.
God has a question. Salams, I see a strong structure in your pictures, but also very deliberate in your color choice. Can you describe your inspiration?
Interesting question. I love color, I think, and texture. And so even when I do shoot a black and white shot, it's very textured and like, it creates depth. But in general, I love color. I feel like it adds a lot of kind of depth in the photo. But even like this one that doesn't have color, like I kind of, with a photo like this, I grappled because I did shoot it in color and I was like, nah, it doesn't need it, right? Because it was like, it didn't need it because it was just like so strong without it. And then I had like muted tones like blacks and a little bit of gold accents, but to my mind, I just needed to desaturate it. And so I think with my choice of color and how much color, what color accents, it depends on the subjects. Like, with the photo of Sarah on the bridge, this one, I kind of desaturated all of the background, right? Except her. And it's just because, and the bridge is pretty muted. It's like a brown color and it was like an overcast sky, so it was quite gray, but to my mind it was all like distracting from where I wanted you to focus. And so I just kind of desaturated everything except her, right? And just left her in the center of the photo. And so it depends, but I feel like colors help me tell my story or not, or sometimes I feel like this one does not need it, right? She's just like perfect without it, and I guess like desaturate everything and just let the textures speak.
Miriam is asking, what's your go-to lens for your portraits?
85 millimeter Sony, but I also, actually most of my photos, like the lens I use the most is a 24 to 105. And that, like, there was no, it's not like a portrait lens actually, but it's like a Sony G Master. So Sony makes, I transitioned to Sony, and then basically I didn't want to buy 5 lenses, so I needed to start with one versatile one, and that's the one I started with, just because it's a huge range. But 85 is definitely the best. 85 G Master, but in general 85 millimeter of anything, of Canon, Nikon, is a pretty good portrait lens. Somehow 50 is pretty good because it's in between, because sometimes with like an 85 can be limiting in New York because it's just, you know, so wide that you need to like take so many steps back, and now you have 8 people in your shot. So it just, I think it depends on what you're trying to capture and where you're trying to capture it. Because if you're shooting at, like, I don't know, Times Square at 2 in the afternoon or something, you need something that can give you range, so you're relatively close, but you can focus on what you need to.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Any more questions?
I have a question. I have 2 comments and a question. So I noticed that with Ageless Beauty, you spoke about you shooting this where they store salt, and you know, salt is a preserver. So I thought that was like really interesting that you combine the two. I thought that was like really, you know, a stroke of genius. And also about Sarah's photo, like, you know, you see how the sun is so prominent, and then her dress is yellow, so they kind of mimic each other. And I like the way that you brought her to the forefront and used less shadow. So she's like right there. It's really just about her and her relation to her yellow dress, and then that yellow dress and her and their relation to the sun. So I thought that was like really awesome. So I actually love photography. I actually took 2 photography classes in school, and I was a photographer at one time, but you know, that's not my thing. But you know, but one of the people who really inspired me was Gordon Parks, because I felt like he was a Renaissance man, and he, you know, uses photography to document the human condition. He also uses he started Essence magazine. A lot of people don't know that Gordon Parks started Essence magazine as a result, because, you know, not a lot of Black women were getting like into Vogue and Elle at the time. And so he was revolutionary in that sense, in terms of like documenting, you know, some of the things that you spoke about in your concerns. So I want to know who, you know, whether they're artists or not, who, or maybe it might be a building, who or what inspires you in terms of like what you're attracted to, and, you know, who you look at in terms of like inspiration. Thank you.
Wow. That's a good question. I feel like it depends on what headspace I'm in. He's a young photographer from India, but I think he actually maybe is now based in the US, and his name is Arjun Kamath. And he does this, so he's actually a filmmaker. I think he's still in school, for example, but he's way up there on like my top. I don't know how famous he is in mainstream, but he's way at the top of my list of people. And he does this just because he's a filmmaker and a photographer and a storyteller. He has this kind of capturing cinematic moments, and I feel like he inspires me a lot. Like I think photographs should always tell stories, and I feel like they often do, some just more successfully than others. And so and I'm always interested in how, you know, you can combine kind of photography with kind of writing. And it's something that I keep saying that I'll do. And I have this like you know, I'm thinking about this kind of like a kind of a visual essay in a way, but that has like photography and that combines kind of a written piece. And I think that kind of becomes powerful in a different way when you kind of are able to accompany like one snapshot with kind of the thought behind it. I'm not there yet, but it's definitely on my list of where do I see my work going, or the next level, or the next stage. But it's a good question. But I think I seek inspiration from everywhere, from people that I know, and sometimes my subjects, and I just see someone and I'm like, oh my God, you're amazing. Let me photograph you. You know, and sometimes it takes convincing, because some people don't, you know, as I said earlier, they don't see themselves like they should be in front of the camera, or that they like it, or they're like good in front of the camera. But honestly, they don't see what I see. And sometimes it takes a lot of convincing. Be like, I'm going to buy you brunch. Please just walk with me. Just do it. Just do it. Meet me on Sunday. And it's just, and oftentimes whenever like I give them the finished result, they're always like, oh my goodness, this is amazing, I look amazing, right? And I feel like that to me is really fulfilling. Yeah, I hope I answered your question. Any other questions?
Assalamu alaikum, Nasra.
Welcome, salam.
Mashallah. Mashallah. The work is really beautiful. And yeah, I love the contrasting between the subjects and the background. And yeah, like that special moment where everything just comes together, as Maya was describing with the model with the yellow dress and the light. And you know, it's amazing how it just all comes together, and it's great how you as a photographer can capture that one moment, and all you're doing is really you're capturing life. That's what you're doing, that special moment. And yeah, so it's beautiful. And I really love the stories behind the photographs of how they come together, like the way you guys come together to meet and all that. It's really nice to know, like, everything that goes on behind the photograph, because really that's what makes the photograph as well. And so, I mean, I think you did answer my question of like, what do you get from the subjects, as the artist behind the lens, like,
Mhm.
what do you learn? But maybe you can elaborate on that as well. Like, what do you get behind the lens as an artist?
I think the first thing I learned was kind of to see people, not look at them, but like to see them, right? Um, in a way that I think even many people don't see themselves. And I think I also kind of learned the importance of a moment, because time is fleeting, it's constantly moving, everything is changing constantly. But just this ability to just because I have my camera and this lens to just kind of stop time at this particular moment, right? And to my mind, I've learned that like I love it. It's just like there's nothing like it to just be like, even when I'm like shooting motion, like I'm shooting like shots like this, and I shot like a ton because there's this fabric moving. It was a really windy day in downtown Manhattan, and there's her, and she's leaning over and I'm on the floor, and I've just like shot like 20 shots to just kind of get that one shot. But to my mind, you kind of learn the importance of a moment, of just like that one moment that just mattered for this shot.
I have another question if no one else has one. Where do you see yourself going from here? What's next, Nasra?
Well, I think so. Also, with the pandemic, it gave me time to think about what I wanted to do and what kind of projects. And so I've started, because sometimes I guess it depends on the shoot, but if it's something, that has many players, or I wanted a particular look, a particular piece of jewelry, particular clothing, particular setting, I kind of need to like mood board it and think about what I'm going to shoot, what time of day, who I'm going to shoot it with, etc. And so what's next is trying to be kind of more curate my work, self curate. And I think shoot less. I'm kind of trying to shoot less, but more meaningful, and working towards kind of a larger project. So, as I kind of told Maya, it's or when I was responding to Maya's question, it's more about thinking that, yes, I want to tell this story. I want to do this series of about faith or age, or capture a whole wide range of women. And basically it's about creating bodies of work. And I feel like that's next for me, as opposed to just having like one shoot versus another. It's about taking 20 photos that kind of are part of a larger story. And I think that's next for me. I've also like, I feel like I've been applying to like, so actually I have one photo that's showing at like an American Futures exhibit. So I've been kind of diligently trying to apply to things and be like, because everyone's like, okay, you can do it. So I've been thinking about that, and photography grants, just like looking to fund my art in a way. And that's kind of what's next. I applied to like some artist fellowship, who knows if I'll get them or not, but just I think what's next is seeing how I can grow and the many different ways that I can grow, and one on my own, and kind of trying to like tap into like larger networks and like wider support systems and just see where it goes.
I think that that's a good way, especially now with this weird connection question mark that we're having. The point of all this was to kind of bring us together as artists. And this, I want to say, I don't want to say a good thing that came out of the pandemic, but a most interesting thing that came out of it, that the way that we have all found a way to connect with each other anyway, you know, and even more meaningful. And you are the final person that we are interviewing, that we're talking to. GAMA is sponsoring this for us. And as we went through all of them, you know, there was artists from basically all over the place that we all came together to speak about. Did you find any one of them more? I found them all very interesting, I will say, but I have to ask you, if you could work with another artist, who would it be? It doesn't necessarily have to be any of the ones that we spoke to. Just who would it be?
I'd actually pick one that we worked with that you kind of did a previous artist talk on, and I feel like I'd pick Medina. And like our work is somewhat worlds apart, but it kind of blew my mind. Like this is someone I hang out with a lot. Like she, on her day off, she takes the subway and we'd have lunch at Union Square. But I did not know she could do any of that. You know, like I knew she was an artist, but I hadn't seen her paintings and the depth, and it was just like it was amazing, right? And I feel like just, you know, like we've had lunchtime conversations, endless ones, and I feel like I just didn't know that side of her, and I feel like I would love to. And in a way, there are some common themes in our work, even though hers is so different. And I feel like when I did attend her artist talk, she's kind of a minimalist in every way. Like she just make this painting that's like on a white canvas with black paint only, and it's just like super minimal. You know, it's direct. It's like 8x8. It's a perfect size. And I think like in many ways I'm the opposite. I'm kind of all about excess, right? And so I feel like if we did something together, if we found a way to find a middle ground and then balance each other out, it would be amazing. Because I feel like I exist on the opposite spectrum. I'll be like, why are you only using black paint? Why can't we put 8 other colors? You know. But I feel like, yeah, we should talk, Medina. We should talk.
Yes,
I would love to work with you, Nasra.
Yeah.
That would be an honor.
Yeah,
You're
I'm not
amazing.
sure we have to see this now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, no, so all right, now you see this is something new that's coming up, GAMA, right?
Yeah, collaborations.
Collaboration.
Inshallah, please, yes.
Yeah.
So cool. Maya.
Yes, I have a question. How I see your work when you're talking about the photo shoots, you know, very planned out. You just talked about a mood board. Are you how much does spontaneity inform your work, or is that something you want to like explore, or you're just like no, or is it like, you know, does that figure into your work, like the spontaneity of taking a photo?
I do a bit of both. Like the hair shot is spontaneous. Janice is spontaneous in that we just decided to meet up after work and do some headshots, and so I feel like I do both. But like the Wafika's shot, which is like with the black abaya, that was definitely not spontaneous. That one we had thought about it and been like, okay, we need this and we need someone to do calligraphy on her face and whatever. But like so I do a little bit of both, and it depends on the context. This one was not spontaneous with Wafika. Sarah was not spontaneous because I had thought about it. You know, I had to check the weather because I wanted that bridge, right? And I wanted it early in the morning. I had to tell her, you got to wake up at this time and meet me at this time because I need that shot, and I don't want cyclists in like neon orange biker shorts in the back of my shot. And so there's sometimes I need to control the variables. But like this one with Janice, this one was just more natural and chill. And be like, let's go take a walk. And be like, okay, I'm going to take your portraits and, you know, do this and do this. And so I feel like I do a little bit of both. I feel like, to be honest, I don't know that I like more. The work is just somewhat different. And, you know, it's harder to control the outcome when it's spontaneous, because I'm not in control of as many things as I'd want to be. This one was somewhat spontaneous. We met that day and I was just like, oh my God, you look amazing. You want to hold a sunflower for me? And it worked out, right? But I feel like I do a little bit of both. But like when I work with Medina, it's not going to be spontaneous. We're going to like sit and curate and think about what it is that we can do together to tell a story and make a piece. I feel like I do both. I wish I was better at spontaneous shots. There are those like portrait photographers who just like walk around, because New York City is an interesting place, right? Then they just like walk around and just like meet someone on the subway and you're like, can I take your photo? And 70% of the time they'll be like, are you crazy? But 30% of the time they'll be like, yeah, sure. And maybe that's how you get that amazing photo. And so I could get better at spontaneity, but I try to do a little bit of both.
Any other questions or comments for Nasra? Okay, we are actually at the end of our talk, Nasra.
Yeah.
We did a whole hour.
I remember talking to you and be like, shit, can I talk for an hour about my work? And you're like, yeah, probably.
It goes so fast, and when you're passionate about something, it comes easy.
Yeah. Can I ask I have a question before we leave. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. You have, I see that your work is called My Faith, My Identity. How heavy do you weigh the objects of faith in the pictures versus the people who are faithful? Like, is it equally important that you focus on both in your pictures?
That's a good question. I think it depends in a way. And I think my photos want to focus more on the people that are faithful and in the way that they choose to be faithful in a way. Because to my mind, I think faith in a way is personal. It's always personal, and I think even when especially with regards to Islam, intent is everything. And so I feel like it's less important for me to feel like I am capturing the Muslim identity or the Sikh identity, because that's not a thing. They're all individual in the way, I practice, so I dress, so I wear my scarf, versus you, versus, any other number of women is different. And so I feel like to my mind, it's less, I'm not trying to like represent, for example, faith. I'm trying to represent someone's experience or practice or celebration of it in a way. And in a way, like I can, even like different subjects in hijab, I feel like when I capture them, it's different. Like every woman ties it different, like even with pins, no pins, right side, left side, chin in, chin out, forehead out, whatever, right? And so there isn't one way to be anything. There isn't one way to be a woman. There isn't one way to wear your hijab. There isn't one way to to practice Sikhism. So to my mind, it's more important about capturing the person.
Alhamdulillah. That's a very, very, very poignant answer and a good point. It's about the subject more so, and what you see in terms of faith for them is not fair. It's what they feel.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nasra. We could not wait for this one. Everyone was very honored to have you and your work in the show with us, and we're looking forward to big things with you. And as you stated, the what's next for you, inshallah, I hope that we all get to see you thrive. And for all of the artists that are on here, we know that we have to keep going and we have to evolve into who we are becoming. So.
Yeah. I mean, except you, because you're already there now.
I'm
having this conversation. Taeesha is like a she's a real artist, like with the studio and real paintings and in like real spaces and real galleries. And like, because I remember meeting you and your work kind of blew my mind. And every time I see your work, it blows my mind. And I was like, yeah, she's still, I'm like, where else are you going to go?
The same way. I feel inspired when we talk to each other, when we see each other, and even in our works, because we've met at several shows, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
where I've always been in awe. And even looking at your photographs, I felt like, wow, I get to know her on a different level every time. And I felt like that actually about all the artists that I interviewed, especially when I know you, I know you more now. I know the meaning of who you are to me has deepened, alhamdulillah. And then I look forward to so much. I look forward to seeing where we all go as women, as Muslims, as artists. You know, inshallah, we're gonna blow our own minds. That's the plan, right?
Yeah, inshallah.
MashaAllah. Everyone, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you so much, Nasra, for sharing your work with us. And we look forward to more things all together.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, actually.
Of course, of course. Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome salam.